Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Ozcast.
Well, Drew, they say a week is a long time in football. 2 weeks feels like an eternity with the bye included for West Coast Eagles fans. Arguably our best win since 2018 against the Tigers. And then we fall into some very bad habits against the Western Bulldogs and we flat again. It was a disappointing performance, and the take on it that we both have, I think, will be really interesting for everyone. Hello to everyone out there, Nest family. Drewy, where do you sit right now? What did you make of it? Right, wrong? Where do we go from here?
God, it was a real punch in the mouth, like a reality check. If you'll ever find one, to go from the high of Richmond to the Dogs. There's actually a lot to unpick from this game. I think it feels like, from the analysis that I've listened to and probably the thoughts that I've had running through my head since the game, you fall into one of two camps, Garby. So you either think that we got the selection wrong and played too many underdone stars or brought too many back at the same time, or the other side is that it's just clear that there's a gap between West Coast and the top 4 or 5 sides of the competition. So, yeah. And both of them are probably true, but where do you land? What do you think is the more significant point?
So we'll talk about selection in a moment, which I think is significant. I don't think it would have made a difference in the end. Where I sit right now is that the West Coast Eagles are at a really interesting juncture in their season, and it can go one of 3 ways. And one of the following 3 things will prove to be true at the end of the season, and I don't think anyone is really the wiser as it stands right now, which is probably why I wasn't as furious about the performance and the results as some other people are. Now, we are either the inconsistent, flaky team who can beat anyone on their day 1 minute and then be rolled by anyone on their day the next. We're one of those sides. And that means that maybe you can build some momentum and have a couple of good finals and make it through to the decider potentially. So we could be that. We could just be a weak team mentally and a team that gets a little bit too happy with itself, as we've discussed on a few occasions, and gets rolled over. And when the momentum is against them, they can't stop it. And when they're away from home, they're not tough enough. And when the conditions don't suit them, they can't adjust, which was the case on Sunday. Or maybe we are the team that beat Richmond. Maybe we are the team that won it in 2018 with a lot of special players who can lift in key moments and can click in the second half of the season and take advantage of what is a slightly easier draw over the next 5 weeks or so and put ourselves in a good position and then gain momentum and win some finals and maybe even get close to a top 4 place. We are one of those 3 teams, Drewy. And to be honest, I don't know which one it is. I don't think anyone knows which one it is, because 2 weeks ago, everyone was saying the Eagles are back and they're contenders again. And how good was that against Richmond? And Yo's giving them the inspiration, and Shuey's back, and this guy's back, and that guy's back. And look at this lineup and look at who's out of the team. And then this week, we're flaky again and we're pretenders and we're nowhere near it. I don't see how there can be that big of a discrepancy from one game to the next. So I think we sit as one of those 3 options. And I'm intrigued to see how it plays out. I don't know which one we are just yet.
Stand by, I was on mute. It's interesting, isn't it, Garby? I think that our lows are very low, and that's probably the difference between the 2021 West Coast Eagles and the 2018. So when we're bad, we're bad. And we haven't shown an ability to change momentum within games or within quarters to get the game back on our terms, or to turn what is an ugly, poor performance into a good one. And just having a look back over at the games so far this season, there haven't been too many times where we've won ugly. Like if we're not playing well, like we're probably not going to win. Like, if you watch Essendon v Melbourne on Saturday night, the Demons were a bit off, but they beat Essendon. They're a good side. They've got really solid foundations, particularly defensively, and that allows them to win when they're not playing well. And at the moment, we don't have that ability. So the 2015 grand final was a great example of that West Coast side. When things went against them, their plan B couldn't get the job done. And I see a lot of that in this team at the moment. Credit to Adam Simpson after the 2015 grand final. Over the next couple of years, the team obviously evolved, but he evolved as a coach and developed another way for us to win. And the 2018 grand final is the perfect illustration of the West Coast team that changes momentum, goes to plan B, gets the game back on their terms from 5 goals down and wins a flag. So that is not us this year. So you're right in that we're still capable of winning the premiership. I don't think anything changed in my mind on Sunday about that. It's just that if we, at any stage during the finals, have an off day, like we're going to get absolutely crushed and kicked out of the finals and with that, with a whimper. But if we get on a run and play really well, then we're absolutely in the hunt. So there are mitigating circumstances to what happened on Sunday, but I don't think it changes the fact that it shows that when West Coast are average or below par against a top 4 team, like we're going to lose by 10 goals plus. We were horrible against Geelong and the Cats played really well. You lose by 95 and the Bulldogs probably should have beaten us by a lot more on Sunday. They didn't kick straight. We were off, they were on, and there was no way for us to win. So I think that just shows where we're at.
They were exceptional, so we need to take that into account. Like sometimes you come up
absolutely
against,
awesome.
Like a lot of people are going on about the result. They were 10-3 going into the game. They're, I think, equal premiership favourite, and they were on big time. That happens sometimes in seasons. You run into a really good team, you're a little bit off, they're at 100%, and you get rolled. I mean, you could go through every season, and I'm sure you'll find in the majority of them, the team who wins the premiership lost a game that people were pointing fingers at them afterwards that they should have won or they should have competed in better. I don't think this game will necessarily mark our season. I'm calm about it because 2 weeks ago we put in an incredible performance at home, 4 goals down with 10 minutes to go and managed to win. So I'm just keen to see where we land from here. The players that have come back, maybe they came back all too soon. But what else can you do? You had a bye, you had all this talent, they were all ready. You got no choice but to bring them back. So we've got Sydney in a neutral venue this week, so it's a 50-50 game on paper. Maybe it goes our way, maybe it doesn't. After that, we have Adelaide, Collingwood, St Kilda, and North. I'm not sure in that order, but those are our 4 games after that. We realistically, Drew, could win 4 of our next 5 quite comfortably when you look at those games. And then all of a sudden everyone's going, oh, the Eagles are back. They're contenders again. Look at this team. Their big guns are firing once more. Watch out come finals. You don't want to face the Eagles when they're up and going. It just changes so quickly. It's so reactive. So really disappointed about the way we played. We were poor and we didn't react to the environment. We didn't react to the opposition. We didn't react to the weather and the crowd. But let's just see where we land afterwards. Let's just see if it's not as big of a indicator of where we're at than how we feel it might be right now, and maybe it was just a little blip game.
Every team this season has had aberrations, and that's, you can say that categorically across all 18 clubs. Melbourne lost to Collingwood, they lost to Adelaide. There's always been shock results along the way, and maybe it wasn't a shock that we lost to the Western Bulldogs, but the margin certainly was a surprise. I wonder if Adam Simpson and the match committee saw the opportunity to bring players back. Tough game against the Western Bulldogs at home. Did they see it as a bit of a free hit going into what was always going to be a really important game against the Swans, who are closer to our position on the ladder? Getting those guys back into the team, betting them back in. Like, you can't tell me that Kelly and Shuey and Nat Nui aren't going to be better for the run of all being in the same team together, understanding the dynamic of the centre square. Sheed and Redden having to adapt to slightly different roles. Like, everyone's better for the run for having those players back.
Yeah.
Barras gets some support with McGovern coming back. So we're going to be a better team. The team that runs out next week is going to be better placed to perform well for having everyone back. So, yeah, And you're right. And it's what I've probably said to people a little bit in the office is like, well, if they're ready to play, that they're ready. So you just bring them back and, and come what may.
Yeah. I mean, also they build up a lot of trust, the match committee, in these players because they've delivered for them for so many years. Jeremy McGovern, Luke Shuey, Brad Shepherd, and then Tim Kelly. I mean, you got to get those players in the team. You can't tell any of those players when they're 100% fit, have another week off because we don't want to bring too many back at the same time. Like, you trust them to be at their absolute best, right? So I don't think you can knock it at all. The one inclusion I didn't understand, and I apologize if he sounds like he's becoming a bit of a whipping boy for me, but I didn't understand the logic in bringing Jack Petrocelli back in along with all those players. Like, he's had a couple of good games this season. Yes, he acts as a point of difference when he's at his absolute best because of his speed. But when you look at the way Jermaine Jones and Zach Langdon had been playing in recent weeks, it felt like an unnecessary inclusion. And I thought he was pretty poor again. There was a moment in the third quarter where the ball bounced free inside 50. He was in a perfect spot to rove and make something happen in front of goal, and he didn't get near it. He got beat into the ball easily, and he looked a little bit sore again. And you just went, well, why was he playing? Surely Jones or Langdon would have been better options with that in mind. I didn't understand that one.
Yeah, as soon as I saw the team sheet, I was staggered that he had come in for the reasons that you've outlined. We're not a great team at keeping the ball inside 50 when it gets there. If we don't mark it and kick a goal, which is common for us to do, we do convert our inside 50s really well. But if we don't mark it, we're not a great side at keeping it in there. And Petrocelli should be the one who's partially responsible for keeping it in. And so I don't know if he's been playing that part of his role that well. I'd be more confident in Langdon or Jones doing that. So I would have preferred to have had one of those two in the team. It's easy to say in hindsight, but Marcus Bontempelli has got 20 coaches' votes against West Coast this season. Should Jackson Nelson have played and tagged Bontempelli? That's a tough one, because who do you leave out? Do you think that Nelson should have played?
No, I think they got that right. I don't think his form has been good enough to stay in with all the players we had coming back and the players who had performed well over the last 2 weeks prior to the Dogs game. I mean, he did a solid job against Dusty, but it's not as if he blanketed him. But he was a good matchup for him and did okay. Would he be the same matchup for Bonds? I'm not sure. Like, Dusty's the perfect matchup for Nelson because he spends so much time forward. Bond spends a bit of time forward, but really he operates on the ball and through the midfield. And I think we just backed ourselves to win the ball, and therefore we'd beat him the other way. But we didn't win enough of it. And when you don't do that against the Bulldogs, he's got time to find space and he just kills you. I mean, he's unbelievable. Best player in the league on form. Dusty's still the best in the comp, but on form right now, it's Bont by a long way. So, yeah, he beats us up in that sense. We just didn't win the ball enough. We just didn't go in hard enough. Tim Kelly was way out of it. I mean, he looked underdone. So hopefully he's much better for the run, because that's as poor a performance he's put in for the Eagles, I reckon, considering he wasn't copping a heavy tag like he did in the final against Collingwood when Greenwood got the better of him. That was disappointing. And the other guys just didn't win it enough. We didn't adjust to the weather. Like, it got a bit hard for us early on. And that was an issue. We tried to play the same way, chipping it around. Yes, the Bulldogs' defense had an impact on that, but chipping it around, trying to play the way we do when it's 30 degrees and bone dry in Perth, when it was wet. And that was poor. And the Dogs just, I mean, they're the last team you want to play in those circumstances because they're so good in the midfield. But man, we failed to adjust, and it was all plan A. And then when we did adjust, we didn't take our chances. And to be honest, I don't think it would have made much of a difference anyway.
So experts talk about let's say the Geelong Cats as being the chameleons of the AFL. They can adjust the way they play almost week by week to beat the team that they're up against. West Coast are essentially the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Is it an ego thing?
I don't think it's an ego thing. I think it's when you've had a lot of success playing a certain way, you back it in time and time again, and you back your players in and you back your game in, and you think, well, if we're going to win a premiership, we have to produce this style of game. And maybe we're just not adaptable enough in that sense. He has to have a big think about it, Adam Simpson, and I think he has to tinker with things slowly but surely, because not only can you not play that way all the time, we are a little bit slow in our run, but also in our ball movement. Like, it's a little bit slow and static. Teams can set up well against you. And a lot of teams that are weaker than us, like we've seen it against mid-level teams, we run over the top of them late on in games, but you don't run over the Dogs. You just don't do that. They run over you because they've got so many runners. So they were happy to sit back, soak up space, and they can burn you with all their talent, and they can stay in the game fitness-wise until the end because they have so many good runners like that. So against the very best, it's an area I think we fall short. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I'm a bit torn on this because I think there is something to be said for knowing who you are, what your strengths are, and just backing yourselves to the hilt. That's sometimes how I think about myself as a person, and that's you are who you are, and have confidence in what you do and what you bring into the table. So in that sense, I understand what West Coast are doing. And when you break it down really simply, the game plan makes sense. Defend with the ball in hand, use the skills that your players have, which is kicking out of defense and intercept marking. And then if there's no option, kick towards the boundary line, get a stoppage, and let the best ruckman in the competition go to work. So when you break it down like that, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But, know what West Coast are trying to do. So because we're good at it, and because we do the same thing, we're allowing teams the opportunity to scout heavily and to combat us. So, and then you throw in the fact that the weather didn't suit, we're off our game, and then it completely collapses.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. You can set up against West Coast. You know the style is very definitive, and so you can set up a game plan. Doesn't mean it always works, but geez, it's much easier to plan for what you know than what you don't. We also went in too tall. So for me, Waterman and Petrocelli shouldn't have played, and Langdon and Jones should have. Like that for me isn't an easy change. I don't know why Jake Waterman played as well, especially when you could see that the rain was coming in and wasn't going to stop. There had to be a late change there. Waterman out and one of Langdon or Jones in. I didn't understand that. Or, Xavier O'Neill, I know he played in the waffle, but someone like that should have stayed in calculations, or a Luke Foley, potentially, another runner. I don't think it would have made a difference in the end, but we've been caught in that sense so many times this season when we try to play too many of those calls. They've got a desire, I think, to play Jake because they know what he offers at his best, but sometimes you just need to play the extra runner. He just doesn't offer enough against certain teams and in certain conditions.
Yeah, I wonder if Simo doesn't class Waterman as a tall.
Yeah, I don't think he does, but I think he is. It's certainly in a wet weather day like that. Come on.
Yeah, I'm torn on Jake Waterman's spot. Sometimes I feel like he's playing because he is a best 22 player, but maybe he doesn't quite fit into our team. But we're playing him because he's a good player, and we're hoping that he adjusts and fits in, and you kind of go in with the thought that, well, you play your best players, and they'll adapt. Yeah, I don't know if there's an easy answer. Like, if at the moment next week, if you want me to pick between Waterman and Brander, I'll probably pick Brander.
Yeah, I think with Brander, the issue is sometimes the fight isn't there. Like when he's on, he's fantastic and he offers a lot more. But then you think back to a couple of games, like the Giants game away, and you're like, you just weren't there. Your head just wasn't in the game. Whereas Jake, the commitment's always there. You can tell he's always working hard. Maybe he just doesn't quite have the confidence right now. And then maybe he's too tall in certain situations when he gets caught in a wing against certain players, even though he's got some speed. But Brander at his best, I think, is a better option. The team for this week is going to be really interesting, and we can go through that in a moment. Before we do, though, Drew, let's go through the vote. So let's talk about some of the positives and the players that we liked from the weekends. I might go 5-1 first this week, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Nick Natanui was the best Eagles player for mine. I'm starting to feel sorry for Nick. Like, he's working his backside off, and there's just too many games where he doesn't get the help. And you're almost like, you can see him walking off going, for goodness sakes, like, I'm fighting my ass off here. And some guys just aren't coming with me. Some weeks they are, and some weeks they aren't. But he's always at that level. I thought he was awesome again. He's just clearly now our best player this season. So 5 for Nick, 4 for Tom Barrass, who copped a heavy hit early but kept going all day. Some big intercept marks. 3 for Shannon Hearn for the same reason. Kept going, big marks, try to drive the Eagles on. And I thought he was fantastic in that sense. 2 for Jack Redden, who gave us a bit in the midfield. And 1 for Brad Shepherd, who was solid down back, but there weren't too many other options.
So Nick Nat's stat line is awesome. 39 hit-outs against Tim English is in some ways expected. He's always going to dominate that ruck duel. He had 16 contested possessions of his 20, and he had 8 clearances. It was a gargantuan game, 5 score involvements. And, yeah, we say it week after week, but he's always our best player when we lose, and he's usually a big reason why we win. So, yeah, he's one of the best players in the competition, in our opinions. I can speak on your behalf, I think, on this one. Yeah. He looks set for an All-Australian. Guernsey, he'll probably win our best and fairest as well. He's having a superb season. So let's hope that, people can start going with him. But if he keeps doing what he's doing, he'll drag us over the line. He'll drag us to September for sure. I gave 4 to Jack Redden. I thought, considering the fact that his role changed and he had to, accommodate for Shuey and Kelly returning, I thought he was excellent. Our best midfielder on the day, clearly. And I've just been so impressed with him this season. I think he's been, above and beyond what we were expecting. And so good on him for that. Barrass 3 was a huge pillar for us down back. Again, having a great year, as you mentioned, to battle through the hit early. Very impressive. I gave 2 to McGovern, who I thought was great on his return. Nice to have him back. And this is it's not a protest vote, but it's just a bit of a sort of a, no one else played that well. But I gave a vote to Dom Sheed, who had 14 contested possessions. It was our worst performance of the season as far as contested possession differential. The Dogs beat us by 30, which is like an absolute shellacking. But Sheed was able to get his hands dirty and win the ball in the midfield, so I gave him a vote for that.
All right, so the votes were a little bit down this week, I think, because, let's be honest, the supporters were probably down. I didn't feel like putting a 5-1 out there, but a number of people did. We thank you for those. Give us the tally for this week, Drewy, and then I'll update the Nest Medal leaderboard.
Yeah, Nick Nat 48, so he got the 5. Tom Barrass 33 gets the 4, and then pretty close amongst the rest. McGovern 15 gets the 3. Reddo just behind on 14 gets the 2 votes for the game, and then someone who we didn't mention is Josh Rotham. He got 11 votes and gets the 1.
Okay. Who got the 2 then, sorry? Redden. Redden got the 2.
Correct.
Good on Rotho. I thought he just took a lot of cheap marks because, let's be honest, the halfbacks did that all day. The Bulldogs sat back, and so we chipped it around a lot. So he got the ball in that sense. I'm not sure he did too much with it or too much defensively. Not a knock on him, but yeah, it was just a lot of cheap ball for a lot of defenders. He was one of those. I thought other guys did more defensively, but hey, fair play if you saw it differently. So here is the updated Nest Medal leaderboard. It has Nick Natanui now way out in front on 32 votes, an 11-vote lead for Nick Natanui from Tom Barrass and Tim Kelly, who are both on 21. Jack Darling, who hasn't been cited in the last month, is still there on 20. Dom Sheed on 15. Andrew Gaff on 14. Jack Redden now joins Gaff on 14. Oscar Allen, who was out to a bit of a lead early, hasn't moved much lately. He's still on 13. Jeremy McGovern's a bit of a mover. He's up to 7, level with Jack Petrocelli. So that is the updated Nest Medal leaderboard. Josh Rotham gets his first votes of the season. He's been close a few times. He finally sneaks one in, so he deserves that. But it's all Nick Nat's medal at the moment, Drewy, although we don't have an official medal. Maybe we'll get one made for Nick Nat, although I get the feeling it won't necessarily sit at this stage with a pride of place on the mantelpiece. Maybe in a few years, the prestige of the Nest medal will rise a bit for Nick.
I would have thought Nick could probably stick it around the neck and wear it to training. So what changes are you making this week, Garby? I'll throw a couple at you.
I've just written them down.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to I'm just going to talk.
Jump in.
I haven't got any notes, but I've felt this way for a couple of days. I think maybe Tom Barrass needs a rest.
That's interesting.
So I just think, he's playing good footy, but to me, he's looked a bit sore and tired over the last couple of weeks.
Okay.
So I'm calling Tom Barrass managed.
Yeah.
And get Harry back in.
Okay.
And then I'd like to see one of Jones or Langdon return for some bite in the front half, probably at the expense of Petruccelli. And then I'm open to the idea of Nelson, but where that fits and who for, I'm not sure. Luke Edwards is in some ways like the one that probably has to get sacrificed. Didn't have a big game on the weekend. It's not his fault. It's his third game of footy, playing against the Dogs. Our midfield got, absolutely belted. Wasn't his day. We're not holding it against him, but perhaps there's role players who could come in and do more for us.
Yeah. Josh Kennedy will be interesting this week. You'd think they'd probably rest him.
We haven't talked about Liam Ryan, have we?
No, we haven't. We can talk about him now when it comes to the outs. But just on JK quickly. So you'd think, considering the way it's gone with him, he's rested this week rather than travelling to Geelong. But we've got North at home the week after. Now, you don't take any game for granted, and North are actually going okay at the moment. But wouldn't you think, listen, JK, just stick it out for this week, put everything into it. We can rest you against North the week after and still probably win that game. Does that not make sense to you?
Yeah, I see the merit in it. The other thing is, I don't know if that game's going to be in Perth. Like, we just don't know.
That's true.
What's going to happen after this week? We may have to get our whole squad out of Perth.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's an interesting one. I think with Kennedy, you just wait until Saturday and just see how he's feeling.
Yeah.
And if he is a little bit sore, then you take the opportunity to rest him. If not, roll him out. He's just such an important player for us. I know we talked about the fact that the resting might be a good way forward. It's amazing how you can say that after a win and then after a loss, you're like, oh, actually, no, we kind of need him.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll budget on him playing, and I'll say my 4 changes are Brander to come in, one of Foley or Witherden, not sure who, go either way on that. One of Foley or Witherden, Jones and Langdon in, and out go Liam Ryan suspended, Petruccelli, Waterman, and then Luke Edwards you give a rest to. So that'd be my 4 changes right now.
So how do you fit the extra half back in? What do you juggle?
Well, Edwards goes out, and you can maybe move Duggo into the midfield a bit more, and one of Foley or Witherden go to half back, and I think you can make accommodations in that sense. I think you can still make it work. Jones or Langdon, one of them takes the Ryan role. You've got enough changes there with the other players. So I think Duggo maybe goes into the midfield like we'd like him to, and Foley or Witherden play that half-back stepping up into the midfield role.
Yeah, I think there's even a role there for Duggan, but looking after a Luke Parker or something like that. But we've got to respect what the Swans are bringing to the table. They've got a lot of good players, and they've got a lot of good young players. So, yeah, if they can find a way to get Duggan into the midfield rotation, given we've now got an embarrassment of Richards in the midfield. But yeah, Witherden and Foley are both good enough to be in our best 22. So there's no, like we've said, let's get these players in if they're good enough.
Yeah. Where do you stand on Witherden? Does he come back in for you?
I like him in the team. I don't think bringing him in would be addressing what went wrong against the Western Bulldogs. You'd just be getting him back in the team, which I'm okay with. So I'm okay either way. If they feel like they want to address other areas, I wouldn't blame the match committee for that. But I think, if we're gonna do it and be a kicking side out of defence, then let's just do it and get Witherden in.
Yeah. Yeah, on Liam Ryan. it's hard to work him out at the moment. I mean, he absolutely tears Carlton apart. He's quiet against Richmond, but then sets up the match winner for us. And then he looked really off against the Dogs. Like something wasn't right. His chasing wasn't there. He wasn't involved at all. And then he gets suspended with a bit of petulant frustration. He just seems to be really up and down.
Yeah, so my theory on this yesterday was if we brought Liam Ryan back a little early, or we rushed him back because of our situation, are we paying for that now? But that's just one theory. It's like maybe he's sore again, or he didn't get the body of work fitness-wise into himself then, and now it's catching up with him.
Well, yeah. I mean, Adam Simpson did say something, pretty insightful after that game he played against Carlton, where he was best on ground just about, that he doesn't recover well enough necessarily, that he doesn't always look after himself as much as he should, and that he looked a bit sore and he needs to be 100% with his recovery. Maybe he doesn't do the work in that sense during the week to make sure he's 100% right. And and sometimes it catches up with him, and maybe it did in the Dogs game. So it's an area of his game he needs to work at. It's understandable that he would think, I get by natural talent when I'm up and going, no one can go with me, but you still got to look after your body. And he's had those kinds of injuries that can still creep up on you, even though you think you've recovered as the season goes on, stress fractures and soreness and things like that. And, they're probably going to have to put the hard word on him and say, like, you've got to recover properly. You've got to get yourself right, because it didn't look like you were fully there fitness-wise against the Bulldogs.
I think we could both agree that a week off is not a bad thing for Liam Ryan.
No, I think it's handy for him just to cool down and let his body rest, and then say, listen, you need to spend the whole week just getting right. And then look at these games you got coming up. You can rip them all apart. But, just realise now you got to look after your body properly. You can't just get by on that freakish talent every week. You need to, the game's too hard to be 10% off.
We think this time last year, Ryan was in the beginnings of the best 8-week run of his career form-wise. So if we can get back to somewhere near that, that's going to help with hopefully an ascent up the ladder and stringing some wins together.
So we go back to Kardinia, Drewy, the scene of so much torment over the last few years.
I'm jumping on down that highway. I'm going down the highway. Seriously, if it kills me, I'm going to see West Coast win at that bloody ground.
I mean, it's different against the Swans, of course. It's a completely different ball game than playing Geelong over there. And maybe that loss to the Cats early on acts as motivation. Like, wheel out the tape, Simo. Look at what happened at this ground last time, boys. It was our most embarrassing moment as a group since I've been the coach. Like, go there and make amends. That is motivation for you lads. Yes, it's not the Cats, but just take a good memory away from that ground after what happened earlier on in the season. Sydney are an interesting team right now. They seem to be very beatable when they're not at their best. At their best, they can match it with teams, but not necessarily win. And Port was a perfect example of that on the weekend. But I watched them lose to Hawthorn, and when you're at it against them and they're a little bit off, they're a bit like us. They can get beaten pretty easily too. They're a bit up and down, and they're still young and maybe a little bit unsure of exactly where they're at. And some players that are young can have off games, and the Parkers and the Kennedys and the Mills and these guys and the Lloyds, they get asked to do too much. So there is an opportunity for us there. And if we're at our absolute best, I think it's a game we should win.
Yeah, I agree they're beatable. That's a fair analysis of where they're at. They're a good team, but they're not playing as well as they were at the start of the season. Just looking at our Kardinia Park history, Garby, so 97 points this season. We lost by 58 the time before that, 44 the time before that, 75, 44, 99, 39. That takes us back to 2006 when we came back. We were only, it was 25 to 64 at halftime. We end up winning by 3 points.
Yeah.
And that's one of the best wins in the club's history. The time before that, we lost by 76. Then there was the draw, which I don't know if you remember this, Garby, but Michael Braun hit the post late. And it ended up being a 63 all draw. And then you tack on 3 more losses after that, 81, 66, 32. So that's our last, all the games there since the year 2000. We've got 1 win, and a draw. So it hasn't been a happy hunting ground. I'll tell you who loved this ground and loved playing Geelong, the early 90s West Coast.
Yeah.
They won all their games against the Cats when it mattered. They also won 4 straight at Kardinia Park between 1990 and 1994. So Woosha, Jacko, Peter Matera, can you get on the phone this week, call a few of the boys and instruct them how to win at Kardinia Park?
I remember Peter Sumich talking about it on Fox Footy recently, saying we loved going there. It never bothered us. I think they also had a massive mental edge over the Cats. Like the Cats were just spooked by the Eagles. Yeah. 2 grand finals, a number of other games. They just went into their shells against West Coast, and I think we just absolutely loved playing them. We lifted a level. We just knew we had it over them, and we flexed our muscles on a few occasions. So that came into it a bit as well. But, I'm not worried about the dimensions of the ground or anything like that, because we proved against Carlton at the SCG that can be overcome. It's about the way that we play. So we've just got to be at it. And we know that they're a strong team in and under, these Parker and Kennedy, and these guys will be at it from the off. Callum Mills. The interesting aspect will be controlling Heaney and Papley. Does Buddy play? I'm not sure. They could definitely rest him for this week. They want to chuck in a rest for him every now and again. Heaney and Papley are the keys to their forward line. And we've got the matchups for them. I can see Shepherd against Heaney. I can see a Cole or a Rotham against Papley. Or Shepherd takes Papley and a Rotham takes Heaney, for example. We've got the matchups. They just need to win those 2 battles, because those guys are the key to Sydney winning a game. They're the X factors.
So we've got a pretty poor recent record against the Swans. Looks like we've won about 3 of the last 12 or 13 against Sydney. What has it been in recent times? Why have the Swans matched up well? First ever game at Optus Stadium. They've given us a few pretty convincing hidings at the SCG. For whatever reason, Swans have just got this great record against us. Is it because they've had this long history of really hard and tough contested ball winners, which just hasn't been necessarily West Coast's go? Like, is it that simple?
Not sure. I have no idea, to be honest. I would have thought that we had a much better record against them. Don't know. I think the ground's been a factor. We just struggled at the SCG. So that's been an issue for us in recent times. I think, that's been a mental block for us, and we've jumped over it now. But I think that would be a key reason for it. They are a good team. I mean, Dane Rampy's an awesome defender. Like, he's one of the most underrated players in the comp. I know he's rated, but he barely gets beaten. They've got a very sound back line. They've now got a good forward line, and they've got the young players coming through. They're never down for long. So, I don't know why, but it's a big opportunity for us. We need to be at our best, though. We just need our guns to be performing. And we need Jack Darling back taking grabs and dominating the forward line. We need Oscar Allen to lift again. He's been quiet as well. He kicked a couple of big goals, but he wasn't in the game that often. We need our big guys to stand up and really control a game. Jack's the key. Since I called him for the Coleman medal, he hasn't fired a shot. There's no Liam Ryan there this week. He's got to really lift.
Yeah, he's been horrible, really. And we were wrong. Like we said, he needs the bye. He's a bit sore. He'll come back fit and firing. He looked exactly the same on Sunday as he had for previous weeks. A couple of times he raked in some good contested marks. And is it just me, or does Darling get absolutely manhandled every single marking contest and never gets a free kick? Am I imagining that?
Yeah, he probably does. There's probably a couple that go through.
It's like he's so strong that the umpires are just like, do whatever you want.
Yeah.
I thought when Ryan Gardner went off with the shoulder, I thought maybe that was an opportunity for one of those forwards in Kennedy or Darling to take a bit of control of the game on Sunday, but it didn't happen.
It was hard in the wet, of course, but Josh Bruce worked really hard. When Jackie's at his best, it's repeat leads. It's over and over and over again. He's going at the footy, working hard, creating space for others. That seems to be missing from his game a bit at the moment.
So we're level on points with the Swans, and because of the belting we got, we've dropped more percentage. So we're 4% behind them. So it's a pretty big game. If we lose to the Swans, they're going to be a game and have percentage on us. And that is, at the moment, like, we're probably not going to catch Geelong, Port, Brisbane, Dogs, D's. They're 2 games at least clear. So Swans are our way to a home final. If we can jump above Sydney, Hawthorn did us a favour by beating GWS, because that was a massive blow for the Giants to put pressure on the top 8. Richmond obviously aren't the team of previous years, but they have a great run home, the Tigers. But lots of games at the MCG. I think they've only got 1 game left against the top 8 side. So you've got to expect the Tigers to win plenty of games down the stretch, which means we're going to have pressure from behind. So if we can get ahead of Sydney and then get a bit of a run on, then we might be able to get ourselves a home final. And obviously that's massive for us if you want to make an impact. So this really is a crucial game. We can knock the stuffing out of the Swans and get ahead of them. Otherwise, we're chasing our tails.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the schedule after this game, I mentioned it before, but as it stands, it's North at home, it's Adelaide away, it's St Kilda at home, and it's Collingwood away. I mean, if we could win all 4 of those games, home or away, neutral venue, wherever they are, win this one, it was set up beautifully. Even if we lose this one, I think we can win all 4 of those games and still be in a pretty good spot. But yeah, it's a massive opportunity. Hopefully the patheticness of that game against the Dogs fires them up. Hopefully the Guns are better for the run. I mean, you remember Hearn and Ryan, their first games back, they were scratchy, and then Liam blows away Carlton, and Shannon Hearn's been in really good form since. So sometimes you do need 1 game maybe, especially when you're a little bit older, as some of our boys are. Hopefully they're at their best right now, and we can go out there and record a really big win. And the doomsayers are praising us for another week, and then we've got a schedule that opens up. So no excuses for this one. They've got to fire up. There's enough motivation there. And hopefully we can knock off a team that's probably a little bit unsure about themselves as well. If we want to win the flag, we need to take advantage of opportunities like this.
Yeah, agree. Just want to shout out to everyone in Perth at the moment, going into a lockdown. Hope you're staying safe and staying happy, and same for you, Garby, and everyone else in New South Wales and other states who are feeling it at the moment. In Victoria, we absolutely know what you're going through. So stay strong. The Nest will get you, that's 50 minutes. And that's got you through 50 minutes of lockdown.
Exactly right. Thanks, Drewy. All the best, mates. Yeah. And go Eagles this weekend at GMHBA.
Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to AuscastNetwork.com for details.